So peace be upon you. Welcome to this hopefully very interesting chat about what has the pandemic done in terms of possibly controlling the mindsets of people. So we want to have an open discussion. Feel free if you agree or disagree in the live chat. Um, but I want to give a bit of context as to why I think this discussion is incredibly important. Um, it is not the first time in human history that emergency powers have been used around the world to instill fear in people and then stop basic rights like freedom of speech and controlling what is correct information, what is not. And that, if you are not well versed in history, especially let's say Nazi Germany history, that is exactly what happened. And it's a very dangerous precedent, and I'd just like to read a little poem that's very well known if you know little bit of your history about a pastor called Martin Niemöller. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. I first learned, heard of him in a history lesson in school, and it goes along like this. It goes, first they came for the communists, that's the Nazis,
Yeah,
and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came out for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist.
yeah,
Uh, then they came for the unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was none left to speak out for me. Um, This is far more dangerous than most people realize. We normally sleepwalk. I'm trying to reduce my kind of intro because I'm very interested in hearing what Dahir, my old friend, has got to say. Um, but the reason why we are, I believe, very easy to control is part of lack of understanding of psychology. It was so easy manipulated. If you look
yeah,
into this very famous, known by pretty much every psychologist. If you don't know Milgram's experiment, then you're probably not a psychologist, right? And it showed how easy it is to get people to kill other people. It's incredibly
yeah,
easy. All you need to do is wear a lab coat and say
yeah,
this is the right thing to do, and most people follow it. And the very, very few people who don't follow those instructions have very strong moral ethics, very strong, not ordinary moral ethics. And so that's kind of, let's say, what's the hope we have in working against this. So education is incredibly important. History, I suppose, is part of that, and psychology is a part of that. And just to remind you, the Nazis, I'm going to finish it off here. The Nazis, one of the things they did was they burnt books that they did not agree with. And they did all sorts of things. I'm going to stop talking. I'm very interested in what Daher has got to say. Give me some thoughts. Let's have a nice, interesting conversation.
yeah. So, you know, good point. Good way of starting the conversation. And again, with that experiment, you wear a lab coat. Basically, any kind of form of authority, people will tend to follow, even though they feel it's not right. They just won't go against that. So the last 2 years has been um, a really interesting time for me personally, because it's been a really good investigation and observation into the human psyche, just like you've just said. I've learned a lot, and you kind of hear about things happening in the past, and you go, okay, how would it be now? Certain things, for example, war and things like that in the past, you would go, well, how would I react in that kind of situation? How do most people react? And then all of a sudden we get this COVID, and it brings out, not in the same manner as war, but it brings out the extremities of how people react to fear, how people, some will fight against it, some will just succumb to it, and So yeah, it's been really interesting. So there's a lot of stuff to go through with you today. Um, I know that when we first spoke and you invited me to talk about this, we were looking at maybe you suggested answering maybe a couple of questions and there being limited time, and I was like, how about we do a Joe Rogan kind of podcast?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just have an open, free, unscripted kind of conversation, and then we can hopefully address the questions you had in mind, but also touch on a more broader scale. Um, Before I do start, I mean, I do want to share some of the stuff that I've gone through, because it has been a very, very challenging 2 years. Um, and I think we also need to address this massive, big elephant in the room at the moment, which is relevant to the people within our community. So it's the Ahmadiyya Muslim community.
Mm.
I know there's going to be some people watching this program and they're not part of the community, so that's fine. But there's going to be a lot of people who are part of the community, and when they hear the kind of stuff which I'm going to be saying, they're going to be like, "Hold on a second, this is not in line with the community stance, or the head of the community, as we call him, Hazur, not in line with his viewpoints." And then even then say, "Well, hold on, you know what? You're wrong." Just the fact that because you are not going in line with this stance, you are wrong, and I'm not even going to bother listening to you anymore. So just to address this, first of all, I will prove that I'm not wrong. And the biggest proof for me is having a conversation with Hazur himself, and he himself saying, "No, it's okay, you're not wrong." So, but secondly, I just want to point that out, because secondly, the other thing is that a lot of people will listen to what I'm saying, and if I don't mention this in the beginning to start off with, they will immediately shut off and say, "Oh, he's going against what we've been told and what we should be doing. I'm not even going to bother listening to him." So the fact that I'm starting this conversation and saying, "Hold on a second, there's a lot more to it. I'm not wrong. And stay tuned. There's going to be some stuff coming out, and then hopefully then you can make a more of an informed choice." So having said that, let's get started. But it
Go
is
for it.
definitely going to be controversial, I think, for
Great. I like
quite
it.
a few people. Yeah, but it's not designed to be controversial for the sake of it. I mean, this is a very, very touchy subject, and
Mm.
like you said, it deals with human psychology. And when you bring fear into the mix, people react differently. This is why
Mm.
you have
I just want to add though one thing. It's not just fear. There's fear, manipulation, and all sorts of the very clever controls that you might
100%.
not be aware of, that can manipulate people, including doctors. And maybe I'll talk about it if you're not aware of it, because I've been studying psychology for a very, very long time, about 20 years or something. So anyway.
No, 100%. But I mean, I'm a self-defense instructor. Okay, so and fighting is what I do, is what I teach. But it's just not just fighting for the sake. But what we teach is there's this mental and psychological aspect of learning how to defend yourself in real life, and we have that thing of flight or fight response. So when something kicks off, a lot of people just freeze up, or they want to run. Some people choose to stay and fight. It's the same thing here now. There has been a lot of manipulation. There has been a lot of fear mongering. And a lot of people, the vast majority, have succumbed to it, whereas others are now putting up a fight. Now, having said that, I mean, I remember when this started off 2 years ago now. It's in March 20, this started off. It was brand new back then, and we didn't know what we were up against. And, you only had what the news was telling you. And Khalid, I remember myself, when the lockdown started, because I didn't know. I remember we, having to go for shopping, and I was like, okay, only I'm going to go. The family will stay safe. And I used to literally dress up like I'm going to war. Okay, I would be kind of like, the way I would dress up, cover myself up, have the mask on, have the glasses on, because there was this thing of it may be also coming into you, transmitted through your eyes. all this stuff. And then I would come back. I would then take off my clothes, put them in the boot of the car, not bring them in, and then go straight up and take a shower, and then come back and sit with my family. So that was in the very, very beginning. But the thing is that I also was constantly observing, constantly looking, constantly critiquing, and kind of like going, hold on a second, does this stuff make sense for what we're being told? Is it in line with what I see, with what's going on? And as the weeks went by, um, you know, pardon my French, but the bullshit started to wear off. Okay, and you then begin to go, hold on a second, it's not as bad as what they're saying. You're starting to see holes in the official narrative.
It's good to always update what you know. That's good habit.
This is it. But I get it. Listen, there's still, unfortunately, there's still a lot of people out there who are still in that mindset. That fear has a huge control. And even now, when things are a lot of people have kind of become more relaxed, you still have people driving in their cars by themselves with a mask on, and you're just like, come on, but it is what it is. But in terms of
let's talk about some of the proofs. We've done a bit of an intro, and it's good that people update their beliefs, but people are not going to wait around in this live stream if we don't start giving some proofs. So have we got any proofs or proofs about what? So what are any key things that you want to talk about?
People ask me for proofs, and there's tons of it. Now the thing is that I don't want this live stream to be just me effectively bringing out proofs and reading one by one, and then effectively this been to a court proceeding. Okay, that's not the aim of this, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
The idea is
so we
that
could give them something
of
to
course,
begin with.
of course.
I can give loads of proofs. It's really easy to. Yeah.
No. The idea is to mention the proofs, mention what the stuff that's going on, and then it's very easy to go and then substantiate what I've said and kind of say, oh, you know what, yeah, these are the points he's made, and I can find the proof. I mean, I have people now who say to me, even on Facebook, they're like, what proofs do you have? And I said, listen, just have a look at my Facebook feed. Just go through my feed over the last 2 years. There's so much stuff there. But again, the idea with that is people say, oh, it's social media, and they say, that's nonsense. And you go to yourself, really? I mean, why do you
just
think?
tell me, because I know people's attention is not that long, right? And they want, give me something now, Tahir. Just start off with a point, just to get people thinking. Or I could start with something if you like.
Yes. So I mean, foremost, let's have a look at COVID in terms of its threat. How many people actually? What's the survival rate for COVID? Do you know?
Pretty much 100%, unless you're obese or you're over 80, which means you're beyond life expectancy age anyway.
Look, these are simple facts, and when I speak to people, and people say, "Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist and you're an anti-vaxxer," and I'm just like, God, give me some credit, okay? And just have a look at these simple facts. That the survival rate for COVID is 99.7%. So you have a 0.3 chance of dying, okay? That's less than the flu. So you've got other illnesses out there which are far worse, but we don't lock the entire world and shut down the entire world and close down businesses and ruin people's lives and livelihoods for that. 99.7% is the survival rate. Yet look at the damage we've done to the economy, to our mental well-being. There's people who are suicides have gone through the roof. People have lost their livelihoods and their businesses. Big companies have gained, because obviously small companies have gone out of business, and big companies have actually taken over and become far more richer. So yeah, I mean, that's a very simple thing. But I mean, also, for example, now the survival rate for children. I mean, this is also a big one as well. How many healthy children have died from COVID? Healthy children.
Well, next to none would be, yeah.
Zero.
So yeah, so
Zero.
some stats say maybe like 5 or 12 maximum, but then how if they had comorbidities and things like that?
That's it.
That's the question.
The word I used was healthy children.
Yeah.
Now the ones that have died, okay, and every that's a shame and sad. But the ones that have died, they had had serious comorbidities, serious underlying health issues. Um, and again, what's happening? You've got now. See, here's the thing: 99.7% survival rate. About 80 to 85% of the world's population are asymptomatic to COVID. That means
Mm.
they will come in contact with it, but they will have zero symptoms whatsoever. They won't even know they've got it.
Mm.
You've got a few more percentage who will then actually go into hospital. And now these are usually the ones which have underlying health issues. Um, and they get treated and they're okay, but 0.3% are going to die. All right. Now, for something as it's not risky. There's hardly any risk to it whatsoever. You want to
Mm.
now jab
And I like
and
people to
vaccinate.
think for themselves how many people they know who have died, they know personally, rather than learn from the media that somebody's died, right?
Yeah,
So there's only
yeah,
one person I know who had a really bad uh, effect from COVID, and he was extremely obese. And he sent a message around. I'm not going to name the person because it's kind of like a bit rude in a way after saying he's obese, right? But he sent
yeah,
a message around. I was in the hospital, and he's very famous amongst the Ahmadi Muslim community. You might know him myself, right? But he was
yeah.
extremely obese, didn't have much sleep, and sleep affects your immune system a lot.
Hundred
Um,
percent.
he said it himself, right? And so he survived it, right? But that was like the only youngish person who I know, or any person who actually almost died from COVID, right? And
Look, there's
yeah,
there's
and recently, just to add on, we had a person who's 83 in our local area who's we're Ahmadi Muslims are very organized, so we have our local area, a couple of streets, and he was in, had stroke or something, and the message was going around he had COVID, and then when I asked him, he said no, that's an incorrect message. So there's a lot of misinformation as well.
big time, big time. Now, look, I mean, you bought the average death rate, so at the average age of death as well. Yeah, okay, what's the average uh, age of death in the UK? Do you know?
For men it's 80, I think. Well, generally it's supposed to
So
be 80 internationally, right, and 81 for women, right?
yeah,
Or
so I
what is
think
it?
in the UK, from what I last checked, it's around 80, 81, 82 for women, and about 79 for men. Okay, in the UK.
Hmm.
What's the average age of death, COVID death in the UK?
I understand in America it's about 80 median age, so I don't know about
In the
UK.
UK, in the 82.
Yeah, well, it's
So
even worse.
the average age of a COVID death is actually higher than the average age of general death in the UK. What is that going to show you? These people were going to die anyway. Okay,
Yeah.
I had one of my students, her parent, their mother works in St Helier Hospital, which is very, and even she was saying to me that a lot of the people who are dying, they would have died anyway within a year or so. Okay, now here's another thing where people then say, yeah, but to COVID still killed them. So, for example, if somebody has serious underlying health issues like heart disease or cancer, but they get into a car accident and the accident kills them, it's the car accident that killed them. Hence, why they should be counted as a car accident death.
Yeah.
And similar for COVID, and that's not correct, because the the underlying health issue was a significant contributing factor to their death. For example, if you have underlying health issues and I have an underlying health and I don't, and I'm perfectly fine, and God forbid we're in a plane and the plane crashes, we're both going to die. Okay, our health has no contributing factor to us surviving that crash.
Yeah.
But if you have underlying health issues and I don't, and you get COVID and I do, my chances of survival are very, very, very high. Yours are not. So you got to think of these things. But I mean, yeah, for example, just going back to the fact that 85 are asymptomatic. There's a 0.3% of you actually dying, which is less than the flu. But now you want to jab everybody on the planet. Now, does that make any sense? And when you just put these simple facts to people who are saying you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a tinfoil hat, whatever, or you're an anti-vaxxer, they start to go, okay, you know what? Let's just talk sense. This is it. These are facts. What do you say there? And again, just to clarify, I am not an anti-vaxxer. All my kids, I'm vaccinated in terms of
Nor am I.
Yeah,
I'd say
all
very
my
few
kids have had
people
it.
who are, very few people. I mean, generally, the term is ridiculous, anti-vaxxer, right? There's next to nobody who's refused to take this COVID so-called vaccination because that's the whole term is disputable in the first place, right? The idea that it's a vaccination. But I've taken all the other vaccinations there are, right? For when I was a child. Yeah.
No, the thing is that again, but this comes back to what you were saying, psychology. It's when you want to discredit somebody rather than having to have an intellectual debate. You just attack their character. And just brand them as an anti-vaxxer or whatever. An anti-vaxxer now become quite a, it's a bad word, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, for example, now with kids also, I will just come back to the kids topic.
Yeah.
0 healthy children are dying. Yeah. And what did the UK government do? I mean, I'm in the UK, so but yeah, this is pretty much around the world, but I'm in the UK. So the UK government said we need to vaccinate all the kids. Why? Because they need to be protected. But then all of a sudden, then information came out and said, well, you know what? They aren't really dying. They have 0 chance of dying. So then the narrative changed. Okay, we now need to vaccinate them still because we need to stop them from spreading it to grandma and the parents and the adults. Oh, hold on a second. It doesn't. The vaccination doesn't stop transmission. Okay, so
but a lot of doctors still believe that it does.
Hold on, just on this point. But what can we say now? We need to, it's not going to protect them. It's not going to protect others. So what's the other reason? We need to do it so they can go to school. That's it. So they can just carry on with their education without any disruptions, because if they get tested positive, they have to take 2 weeks off. So the official narrative was constantly changing. Even, for example, in the beginning, it's like, guys, we're going to be in this for 2 weeks. It's going to take us 2 weeks to get out of this. We just need to shut down for 2 weeks. Take your vaccine. Now, 100% is now proven without a shadow of doubt, the vaccines don't work. They just don't work. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to kind of just open your eyes and just have a look and go, the vaccines have seriously failed. You even have
but the way we need to make it obvious to people how we know it's failed, and by their own arguments. For example, you have to keep taking these vaccines, and I put air quotes, because you have to keep taking them every month or so. That's, first of all, it's not a vaccine by definition.
They last 12 weeks.
Yeah. So and it keeps getting shorter and shorter, right? How long it lasts.
The vaccine immunity lasts 12 weeks. So I now turn around and I to people, because there's some places even now where they're kind of like, oh, you can't get it without being vaccinated. I mean, that stuff now, thank God, is coming to an end here, okay? But you still got some people in that mindset, and you go, hold on a second, when's the last time you had your second shot? And they go, oh, I had it like 5-6 months ago. Well, I said, you're not vaccinated, because it's waned off. But I mean, forget about that. You've got the CEO of Pfizer. I have a video, And he has come out and he's categorically said, oh yeah, the first two didn't work. The first two, they didn't work. So that's why you need to get the booster. Okay, so you need to get the booster, which is pretty much the same thing as the first two. It makes no sense. But yeah, is that what you want? You want to get vaccinated every 12 weeks, every
Well,
few
you made an
months?
interesting point. It makes no sense, right? So why is it that people refuse to think about it? And that's part of, I think, the very interesting discussion. Why do people refuse to talk about it? And even more so, more than that, people refuse. So people refuse to have a discussion. In my family, and I think in your family, from what I hear as well, we're not allowed to talk about it. It's that bad.
Uh, it was
So,
it was that bad, and it's now not become that bad.
hmm,
For the first time for the first time in 2 years,
hmm,
only a couple of weeks ago, I had an actual conversation with my father.
hmm.
So and he's old school in the sense of, he's like, well, why would the government lie to you? And it's just, and he listens to BBC, and he's like,
Yeah.
what, no, but the BBC said so. And you're just
Yeah.
like,
Connection weak or something? Hope it's not my side. Let's do the old speed test. Seems to be okay. My side. Tahir, it looks like your connection's weak. But I'll just keep going until his connection comes back. Whoops. So yeah, I want to talk about a couple of things while hopefully Tahir comes back and his connection is regained. What is it? So that we are most people like to say they believe in freedom of speech, right? But and part of being part of an Ahmadiyya Muslim community, we are a persecuted group, and we have been advertising on buses for years that we believe in freedom of speech. But I find my experience is that we get extremely rude responses from very close family members who completely refuse to talk about the vaccination. And some of the claims are along the lines of there's fact both sides. Well, let's discuss both sides of the facts. Let's see the merits and reality of these arguments. Why are you against discussing things? And I would say this is not a problem that's just arose by itself and the pandemic has caused this division. The problem has been that people have been refusing to think for themselves generally in the world, as well as our own community. There isn't enough introspection. Hey Tahir. So I was just going on anyway. I was talking about, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Can you hear me?
So I was talking about this problem. Yeah, I can hear you. So I was saying that this problem that's we've seen in the pandemic of people not willing to talk, this is not something that's just arose because of the pandemic. It's just been demonstrated because of the pandemic. And
Yeah.
I would like to say that I have seen this for a very long time in the world, as well as amongst our own community, Ahmadi Muslim community. People are not willing to think, um, think through problems themselves, really question their own beliefs. And I
Yeah.
think as a Muslim, Ahmadi Muslim, we've got amazing proofs to support what we believe. But if you believe just because you're born into a community that therefore you are right and you're going to be saved, and from World War III and all the dire consequences of every single world problem, you're you're copying every other, let's say, cult-like thinking. And I'm not saying that Ahmadi Muslim is a cult. I'm just saying you can have that mindset very easily
Very
if you
easily,
slip into it.
very easily. Look, the last 2 years, like I said, have been very, very challenging for me, very tough, to the point where I've actually lost some friends. Um, Family members have become very upset with me, and there's a few things here. Number one is why people are not interested is because, well, some have actually said to me, I don't have the time to look into this stuff like you do. Okay, fine, you don't have the time, but then when I am sharing information with you, and I'm WhatsApping you this information, that information, look at this, look at that, and you consciously choose to ignore it, um, because maybe you don't have time, at least don't have a go at me and say that I'm the conspiracy theorist, and I'm the whack job of the family. Okay, at least have a look at the information. And I used to say to my dad as well, I said, Dad, you need to look at not just BBC. I said, I look at the BBC. I always watch. In fact, I had a phrase in my house, and again, pardon my French, but every evening I would say to the family,
British BS
yeah,
service, maybe.
no, but I would go, let's listen to some more bullshit, you know.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. But then I would still listen to it, but then I would also then listen to the other narrative as well, and then you get a more of an informed choice. By the way, have you now noticed something with, because now things are changing. Now, more people are actually waking up and now fighting back. Have you noticed? I saw it only the other day. For the last God knows how many, a year and a half, whatever, they've been constantly reporting one day after the other, like 10,000 times a day. We've had so many deaths in the last 24 hours, um, who have died um, after having a positive test within 28 days, something like that, right?
Hmm.
Okay, but and you just like, but that's not an actual statistical fact. It's misleading. But
You mean
yesterday,
people died anyway, right?
I mean, no, it's
Yeah.
it's again, speaking to people, working in hospitals and stuff. The fact that somebody died with a heart attack, but whilst he was in hospital, he got tested and he got tested positive. That death went down as a COVID death,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of proof of that, and it's happened not just here, but it's happened across the world. But for the first time, I think it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, I think it was yesterday, I heard on BBC, they said the exact same thing. They said so many deaths, and they're all going down, by the way, now, but so many deaths after having tested positive of COVID within 28 days. But this is the extra part that I mentioned. But just to confirm, some of these would have died anyway with other underlying health issues. And I
Hmm.
was like, oh, now you decide to say it? Now when the world is waking up and calling your BS, now you
Hmm.
want to go, oh, we're going to try and be a bit more
Well, it's the
honest.
usual scenario. Every day, like the same BBC are the ones who've been supporting every other war that we were behind. But then, as soon as it's obvious and it's too late, after we've destroyed Iraq, for example, then they'll go and say, "Oh, we're gonna catch up with
because
Tony Blair and his deeds."
because there is an agenda at play, and the agenda needs to be completed. Once the damage is done, once the agenda has been achieved, then they'll go back to being, oh yeah, whatever, okay, but
And
oh
they
yeah,
have to,
whatever,
because they have to look sincere at some point
at some point.
to commit the next bit of propaganda.
No, exactly. But I mean, coming back to your question, for a lot of people, they say, you know what, I don't have time. For a lot of people, it's the fact that they just, like you said, with that the
Home.
no, with the code.
Yeah.
A lot of people just have this natural tendency to automatically, without any question, accept whatever the authority says. And again, there's a guy called Jordan Peterson. He's a very
Yeah.
famous psychologist, but he said something which I also have said in the past myself, but he actually said it recently too. And he said that he asks people, "Who is a Nazi?" And they would go, I said that, and they said, "Well, who is a Nazi?"
And he'll go, "You are." I go, "What do you
Yeah.
mean I am?" I go, "Yeah, you are, because if you were living at that time of Nazi Germany, you too will most likely have ended up being brainwashed. You too would most likely have worked, you know, uh, in a camp, and you too maybe even enjoy it, right? That's exactly his own words.
Hmm.
So you look at it today as well,
And
the
I think
manipulation.
people have a having spoke to a lot of people, I think a lot of people struggle to believe that, and maybe a little bit of education on what the psychology of the human mind will explain that. So I'll give a very quick explanation, because there's so many you might have understood because you've done 2 years of research maybe and learned a bit about how this, or more than that, through your your martial arts training. But let me just give a quick explanation of how feeble the human mind is. So just one experiment called the Milgram experiment, just because it's such a basic experiment, but there's so many ways of explaining this. There was an experiment, and it's been proved so many times. That's why it's such a famous experiment amongst psychologists. Is that they would have two people come into a lab, they would call it, right? And one person would be an actor and the other person would be the test subject, as it were. And that test subject would be sent to one room, and the actor would go to another room and you wouldn't see them again, right? And the test subject would have a bunch of dials in front of him. Have you heard of this one before?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So, and it would
yeah,
say, there'll be a person with a lab coat who'd come in and say, look, I just want you to, we're going to do a quiz. This guy's going to try to answer the questions. And every time he gets it wrong, you just press a little button. That's all you have to do, or flick a switch. And on those switches, it says mild pain, mild
yeah,
electric. And then it
yeah,
just gets harder and harder until it's like lethal, right?
yeah,
And all the other person can hear, or the test subject who's being basically manipulated can hear, is the person screaming in the other room, right?
yeah,
As
yeah,
it gets louder and the electrocution voltage supposedly is getting worse and worse. And this has been demonstrated in so many ways. They've even made a movie about this where they attempted this in a prison environment. So basically, just about everybody was willing to kill a complete stranger
yeah,
just on the say so of somebody with a lab coat.
yeah.
And you like to think that you're different, but you're not. You're not being very honest, because psychology is the study of human beings, and you are also a human being. The only way you can escape being that person, being a Nazi, as you put it, right, is having extremely strong morals. And part of having a strong moral is not being the person who says, you know what, I don't have time to study this, I'm just going to go along with it. Because then you're exactly what the perpetrators of the Holocaust said.
Absolutely.
They said themselves, we were just following orders. And that's what you
Listen,
would be doing.
look, it's a very tough thing to look at, and even here, a lot of people will not have the ability or the yeah to actually look in the mirror and see it within themselves. Okay,
Yeah.
but it's going and being completely obedient to authority without any questions. Also, fear. I mean, look, if you're being constantly bombarded with so many people have died, get the vaccine, what happens is that fear kicks in. So there needs critical thinking, but also this kind of certain level, this kind of, what, do you have the courage to, you can hear me? Yeah. Do you have the
Yeah, I
courage
can hear you.
to
Yeah.
walk against the crowd? Can you be that one person and go against the crowd? Now, I'll tell you a funny story, and this is when I also then come into this will also come into the community aspect as well. My, I had serious issues in terms of this. The last 2 years have actually really kind of challenged my marriage, because my wife was thinking one way and I was thinking the other. But again, what's everything I've been saying has actually been proven. And my wife now puts her hand up and she goes, "Yeah, you are absolutely right." But it took us to to a very scary point. But she recently sent me a video, and it was a clip of Keanu Reeves on a show with Drew Barrymore, and Drew Barrymore said, "Oh, I'm not a fighter, I'm a lover." And Keanu then said, "Oh, but no, that can't be. You need to be a fighter. And she goes, well, what do you mean? And he goes, well, what kind of lover will you be if you're not willing to fight for your love? Right. So it's a really cool thing to say. Now, she said, my wife sent it to me, and I said to her, "What? How come you send that to me?" And she said to me, "Well, because that's you. You fight." Now, ours is a love marriage, and when we had to get married, I had to fight for for her. But in this situation, Khalid, I fought against her, in the sense of I fought her to keep her protected, and that's why she appreciates it now, that even the fact that my husband even fought against me to keep myself protected. But why was the fight there? Because even she was saying, you're going against Hazur now. And I was like, I'm
So
not.
again, Hazur, just for the people who don't know, he's a spiritual head of the Ahmadi Muslim community, which is an international Muslim community. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah. So, for us, I mean, he has our utmost respect. He is the spiritual head of our community. He's our spiritual leader. And he then actually, well, let's be clear now. At the very beginning, what did he say? He said that there was official stance, which was those who want to take the vaccine can take it, and those who don't need to. It's up to you. That's what
Yeah,
he
so
said.
a lot of people, what's happened in our community, people send out WhatsApp messages, short clips, and people don't listen to the rest of the videos. So many times our Khalifa is saying, you know what, he wasn't even positive. He was quite negative towards the vaccine in the beginning, but people don't know that because they don't take enough interest. And something me and you were saying before, these people who consider themselves hyper religious and for taking the vaccine, they're not listening to the same Khalifa in all so many of his other instructions, including the ones when he was saying, you know what, don't just take, these are the kind of things that Khalifa was saying, don't just take these vaccines for the fun of it. He said that more than
He did.
one
He did.
time.
He said, don't just take it for the sake of it. Now, look,
Yeah.
yes, eventually further down the line, somebody asked him and said, how can we promote this more and get more people to take it? And he said, you should take it, right? But listen again, look at his words. His words were, according to my understanding, my research, and also the opinions and advice of other experts, this is what I suggest. Okay. Now, people have turned around and said, well, that's it. He said it. And I said, okay, yeah, he has said it. But I said, it's not divine law, divine guidance. That's his own opinion. So now the thing is, here's the tricky part. And this is that part where some people think, well, this is a bit blasphemous. But again, it's not. Because he has said to me himself that it's not. Okay. I have been, when he said that you should take it.
What was your discussion with him?
I'll come back. I'll come to that in a second. So I said to everybody, because people then saying to me, well, he's now said that you should take it. And I said, no. That's according to his understanding and his opinion, personal opinion. And they said, well, obviously he's always guided by God. And I said, no, he's not. And that was like, whoa, hold on a second.
Yeah.
How dare you say that? And I said, no, hold on a second. Just because he is Khalifa doesn't mean he is guided every single step of the way, every single time in all matters. I said, that's
and it can be easy to disprove that idea that he's constantly right. If I said, what's the square root of 10 to Hazur, the Khalifa, and he got the wrong answer, what would you say, right? And
No,
even more accurately, recently he said that you could get vitamin D through Windows, but you can't, right? So there are these different things. Yeah.
He is our spiritual leader.
Yeah.
And I just want to clarify something. I categorically said to him, I wrote to him like 3 times. And even when we had the conversation, I said to him, Hazur, if you tell me to take it, I said, I will take it. Despite my beliefs, I'll take it. Why? Because I know for a fact, for him to give that command to me, there will have to be some kind of revelation from God for him to actually make that point, right? Or for him to say that to me. The point being is that when you ask these people where they get really upset that how can you say something like this? I say, hold on a second. Have prophets of the past, even Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, did he and other prophets and other Khalifas, did they make mistakes? Yes, they did.
Yeah.
All right, it's 100%. Yes, they did. In worldly matters, not in spiritual matters, but in spiritual matters, they were always, guided by God. But in worldly matters, there are instances where they made mistakes. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had given some advice to a farmer, and the crops they didn't turn out to be any good. So the farmer was like, "Well, you told me to do it," and he goes, "But I'm only a messenger of God. I'm not a farmer." So it was
And
a
it was kind of like a question as well. But anyway, that's a whole different thing. He said,
no,
"Why
but
do you dust the seeds?" Anyway, that's a whole different
yeah,
thing.
no,
It's
but look,
essentially an instruction, you could say. Yeah.
but it's a worldly matter.
Yeah.
So a mistake was made. Now the thing is that whether God then covers up that mistake and takes away the negative impact of it, I believe in that, but it's still a mistake, right?
Yeah.
Now my father was talking to me about this, and we were discussing this, that yes, prophets have made mistakes in the past, even Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, in worldly matters.
Yeah.
And he himself then said, I didn't say anything, but I mentioned this to my wife, but he himself said, yeah, but why that mistake happened? And I said, yeah, well, you tell me, Dad. And he goes, for God to prove that he is still at the end of the day a man.
Absolutely. I think
And
that's really important.
yeah, and true knowledge and true perfection only belongs to God himself. That's it. And if you take God out of the equation, then Hazur is still but just a man. Okay? And people will go, oh my God, no, that's a fact. You can't deny that. Now the thing is that Hazur himself said that there is no divine guidance or revelation on this matter. He himself has said it. So when I had the conversation with other family members, and I would say, well, I'm not taking it because yes, Hazur said it, but it's his personal opinion. They were like, no, but he knows better than you, and surely he has been guided by God, and surely he's been praying. I said, I'm sure of course he is the most closest to God, but he himself has said there's no revelation, and they wouldn't accept it. But then
So
when he had
come
the
on,
phone call,
tell me the
yeah,
conversation.
when he
Okay.
had the phone call, we had a phone call. He spoke
Oh,
to my
right.
wife, yeah, because he
Yeah.
spoke to my wife. Why? Because again, I fought for my wife for so much. I actually threatened, and I said to her, if you take the vaccine, our marriage is over. And that's, again, for a lot of people, that's extreme. But I was like, no, I'm putting my foot down. Why? Because it's based on so much lies and deceit, and I cannot be reminded of that every time I see the love of my life, right? So I said, no, it's going to be the end of it. So she actually called up and
What a
and asked.
romantic, hey.
No, but you know what? I will do whatever it takes to protect. Now,
All right.
she asked Hazur for guidance and said, "Can I have a meeting?" Hazur said, "Okay." He's gonna then call, and they had a phone meeting, and in that, Hazur categorically said that he is not wrong, because she said, "Are you upset with him? Should he take it?" And he goes, "No, no, no. He is not wrong for having his opinion. There is no. This is not a matter of Sharia. This is a worldly matter, and he has done." Meaning me, I've done my own research, and based on that, I've made up my own opinion. And Hazur has done his research, and he's got his own opinion. And he goes, "We'll see which one proves to be which one proves to be right."
Right.
But he said to my wife, he said, "I'm not upset. No, he has a right to have his opinion." And she goes, "Hazur, he's still saying now, if you tell him to take it, he'll take it." He goes, "No, I'm not going to." So I say to those people that, look, how dare you say to me that I'm being disobedient when Hazur himself has said, "No, no, you're okay," right? And then I also say to these people, I say, because when they say, "Oh, you're being disobedient," and I say, "Hold on a second, you're saying I'm being disobedient? I mean, what about all the times when Hazur said, we should all wake up for the Tahajjud, for the morning prayer at dawn, and which is not easy to do, huh?" So I say, okay, for you, doing something so simple and easy as going and rolling up your sleeve and getting a jab, okay, but you have the higher moral ground to come to me and have a go at me for not being obedient when I'm waking up with the Tahajjud. It's absurd.
No genuinely good person or moral person could have that stance, because any good person automatically knows they have 101 fault of their own. So whenever we do have a discussion, I think it's fair enough to give your point of view, but don't give a point of view like when, first of all, being rude. That's actually against the teachings of Islam.
Yeah.
Okay, the Prophet Muhammad SAW said everything with gentility is given beauty, and anything else is, I can't remember the exact one, but I don't know if you know that one, that saying
No,
of Prophet Muhammad.
no,
Yeah,
you're
but
absolutely right.
yeah.
But I mean, see, look, ultimately, it comes back to your previous point. Why do most of these people take the jab? It's not because Hazur said, it's because of their own fear. So, in my honest opinion, a lot of them are trying to disguise their fear into obedience. Don't do that. Let's just be realistic. There are some people now, because there are some people who were not taking the vaccine, who were very uncomfortable with it. But when Hazur said to take it, they took it despite not them wanting to. I call that obedience. But unfortunately, when they speak to me and they say, when they realize what I've told them, and the conversation I've had, they go, "Damn, I wish I knew that, because I wouldn't have taken it then." You know.
Yeah.
But coming on to the point of, for example, the government, people say, well, Islam teaches to follow the government. Now, I've got some points here, but I mean, look, let's just.
But you promised me. Did you say anything? What were the arguments you put forward to Hazur? Was there any sort of argument, or was it just, I have a certain point of view, I've done some studies? Is that was that the crux of the conversation?
Look, there's
Or you don't think it's important? What's your
no,
opinion on that?
no. I just think that Hazur is being guided by certain medical professionals
Yeah,
who are very one-sided, in my opinion.
of course. Yeah.
But the thing is that, and how can I say this, is because Hazur's stance is very much on one side, which is the
Yeah.
opposite of my side. Now, the thing is that I don't think Hazur has had the opportunity, or maybe he has, but I don't know. But the thing is, though, there are also a large amount of people in the medical profession who are very much against this thing and happy to want to speak out against it. You've got the likes of Michael Yeadon, who was the ex vice president of Pfizer and also the chief medical officer. You would think this guy knows something about vaccines and so forth, okay? And he has been now coming out, not just him, there's been somebody else, I can't remember her name, Dorothy
Dr.
something.
Monroe. Okay.
I think so, but yeah.
I mean, he's a guy who made he designed
yeah. No, but there's
mRNA
also
vaccines.
this
Yeah.
Irish lady who was part of the Irish advisory board and the European advisory board. These are some big players. Now, these people are now coming out from day one, coming out and saying, "Don't take the vaccine. Don't take the vaccine." They are literally putting their own livelihoods at stake. Why? Are they stupid? Are they mad to do that? No, it's like you just said. They have a very strong moral code, and they said, no. Our livelihood, our reputation does not matter. We're going to sacrifice it for the greater good, to bring out the truth. And they've been doing it, but they've been heavily censored. Their videos are being shut down. And you go, hold on a second. Why is this? You've got on the one side mainstream media giving all this bullshit on a regular basis. No questions, no nothing. And then you've got these other people trying to bring out their view, and they're being censored. Now, the thing is, though, the truth never is afraid of being questioned. Lies are. And these people have even said, bring us onto your show, bring us in, and let's have a public debate, and let's have an intellectual discussion. But that's not happening. And you've got,
so there's a new definition of freedom of speech nowadays, which is we're right, you're wrong, and you don't get to say.
It's exactly. And then you've got family members going, "Oh, you're just listening to social media."
Yeah.
And but hold on a second. They have no choice. They have no other platform to go onto but social media. You know, they're not being. But now, have you actually noticed there has been a big, massive upsurge and a boom in private alternative news channels? Have you noticed that? And I mean, Joe Rogan's a great example. He's got 11 million plus viewers watching one podcast, and you've got CNN now. They've got 1 million. So people are now beginning to wake up. But I wanted to also say, in terms of this government thing as well. Because some Muslims do say, well, we need to listen to the government. Okay, now let's first of all understand something. Even for listening to and obeying our Hazur, our Khalifa, part of our pledges, that there's a word in there, any maruf decision made by Hazur, okay? Meaning that there is some element of discretion there. Now, Hazur was never going to say anything bad for us to follow, but in something like this, okay, where it's a worldly matter, you go, you know what, Hazur, this is the advice you're giving, and I'm not comfortable with it. And Hazur actually then turned around and go, yeah, okay, fine, no problem. If I was in the wrong, he would say, you need to listen to me, you're being disobedient. Now, he didn't say that. But we have this condition, or this little bit of
the whole Maruf thing is a bit complicated, because I've heard one of the previous Khalifa explain that what Maruf means is a general umbrella saying that all good decisions and all decisions are good by definition from the Khalifa. So it can get a bit murky following, but yeah.
Look,
but the fact is, it was not a decision that you had to follow, is what I would rather go down that line. But anyway,
remember, I specifically said, if you tell me to take it right now, I'll take it. He said,
that's
no.
right.
He goes, this is not a matter of Sharia. But you're saying now that we have this thing for our spiritual leader, Maruf. But when it comes to the government, we should just follow blindly.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? I mean, if we know their past history, we know they lie. Iraq War, Al Qaeda, ISIS, even Hazur. I mean, we know that these are all government. They're backed by the Western governments. Even Hazur, a few years ago, he said, well, have you ever wondered where ISIS is getting all of their funding and their weapons from? Obviously, it's the Western government, right? Western governments. So even he himself did not believe the governments at the time. So Hazur then stopped believing in the governments. And now here, I'm not believing in the government, because they are lying and they're being deceitful and so forth.
So I'm trying to, because we could go on forever, right? But I just want to ask a few questions just to wrap up, maybe as fast as we can. So were there any particular arguments you gave the Khalifa, the Hazur, the international leader of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community?
I've already mentioned about the fact that the proof of the vaccines now, if you actually have a look at the data now, the most vaccinated countries in the world are the ones that are having the most cases in the world.
Yeah, okay? That's right.
100%. You've also now got really good examples of places where lockdowns and masks and all these restrictions were in place. For example, in the States, New York's a great example, heavily restricted. Florida, okay, no restrictions whatsoever, no masks, no vaccines, no nothing. And New York is having serious issues. Florida is perfectly fine. Israel was the place where everybody was watching. They've had their fourth booster. They've still got the most cases and the most people dying. So there's some serious issues. But now you've got things coming out in the VAERS, which is a VAERS, which is a reporting system in the US. You've got the yellow card system here in the UK. You've got people who have reported serious conditions, side effects. You've got professional athletes dropping dead on football pitches, on basketball courts. These things cannot be denied. And have you noticed recently, one of my friends sent it to me, the UK government has now actually sent out this vaccine injury thing where you can now claim up to £120,000 as a one-off payment if you have actually had any kind of adverse effect from any vaccine, including COVID. Why have they done this all of a sudden?
Well, it seems a bit odd that they would even offer that, but anyway.
But do you know why? Because there's somebody said that why is it that in the UK the restrictions are very quickly disappearing? It's because we've lawyered up. It's because now, for the first time here in the UK, there is a criminal investigation which is now being accepted by the CID of Hammersmith, and now anybody can actually now call in and give their complaint and their side effects. But there's also now an international criminal investigation, against human rights, which is happening on an international level. And these are actually going on, not just like in terms of, oh, it's just we're going to go after you and get some money back. No. These investigations are being done on charges of murder. And if anybody knows about the Nuremberg Code, in after World War II, Nazis were doing trials, medical trials and stuff against the people. And what happened? Those doctors and those people in charge, they got hanged. They got hanged. Now the same thing we're looking to do here as well. People aren't aware of this, but all these vaccines, they're still in trial phase.
Yeah.
Until 2023. Okay, and all these people who are trying to warn us against these, they were saying that during the animal trials of these vaccines, when initially they survived the first COVID, but when they then came across a natural COVID, okay, afterwards they died. There was a zero survival rate. So this is the sad part. The long-term effects of these vaccines are still unknown. There are people who are coming up with serious side effects. You've now got, for example, now they've come out with this thing of we need to get the kids vaccinated. Kids have a zero chance of dying, yet they have got some chance of getting serious side effects. You want to play Russian roulette with your child's life for something which has a zero risk of dying from. It makes no sense.
Right.
So there's a lot more, but I think it's not just about making money. I think there's ultimately the bigger agenda is control. And people have been saying that, and I agree, that ultimately the vaccines are the vaccine passports, which become digital ID, which initially starts off as a vaccine passport, but then you can then add your health and medical records, your credit ratings, whether you've been to prison or not, anything else, and effectively becomes like a state, like in China, which is it's run as on a social credit system. So you do anything wrong, your social rating goes down. As the social rating goes down, you can no longer now go into that into certain places. You can't get loans, you can't get things like that. It makes you what? Obedient. Be a good boy, follow the rules, and your social rating will go up, and you can get access to more benefits. It's all about this. So the thing now is people are waking up. Now you've got the truckers movement happening, which started in Canada and it's now inspired others around the world. More people are now waking up. It's a good thing. And I think even, for example, the NHS, it's sad the fact that they waited so long because they were quiet up until only recently. They even allowed the workers in the care homes to get sacked, but not until their own jobs were at stake. That's when they kind of woke up and said, right, no, we're going to walk out. And then the government done a U-turn. And now that the government's done a U-turn on the NHS, now they're looking to do a U-turn on the care workers as well. But you kind of like say to yourself, I wish more people had kind of stood up from the beginning, and maybe we would have been saved from all of this. But
I think one of the things we have to realize, though, is that in psychology we have this idea of a bell curve. Let me try to do the bell curve in the screen, and basically it's always it's a very few small percentage point that actually lead the world. So it's not necessary for everybody to understand because most people are copycats. It's just the nature of things. For example, I don't know how an atom looks like. I'm trusting somebody else to to give their correct concept of an atom. So one of our strengths as a species is what we have I can't remember the phrase, but we have knowledge that is combined. We have a combined sense of knowledge that apes and other animals can't really do because we have language. So we're super powerful, but it's also a weakness in that we over rely sometimes on other people. So, I mean, my short thing I'd like to say there is that we don't have to get everybody convinced, because most people will follow somebody else anyway, right? But we need apparently 13.5%. Okay, we're called the early adopters, people who are the ones who lead the way, and if we can get that many people, that's pretty good.
Listen, I mean, a very good example is I was driving one time and some motorcyclist got hit, and nobody was coming anywhere near him. It's called the bystander
Yeah.
effect. Okay, and not until somebody makes the first move, then everybody else jumps into action too. It's a similar concept here. You need to have those leaders initially who and it's again, you can't get upset with people. Most people, unfortunately, are sheep.
Yeah.
Most, if you look at most animals, most are sheep, and you've got a few leaders who are. Not everybody can be a leader. It's very tough because you do at times find yourself being by yourself alone. Have you got that kind of, no, I'm going to still go ahead. I believe in what I do. I'm going to still go ahead with it. And it does start to inspire more and more people. And I think that's what's happened now. But yeah, it's just, it's one of those things. I will also say one thing about the plague as well.
Hmm.
On the plague, which took place in India. Again, people in the community will know this, and they say, well, it's, the Prophet Messiah had sensitive people, that were it not a sign that the vaccine. Let's get one thing straight. The plague, if you got the plague, you're most likely going to die. And if, God forbid, if I was there, I would say, you know what, give me the vaccine. This, you have a 0.3% of dying. It's not the same thing. And like I said, these vaccines aren't tested. The truth is coming out. More and more of it is coming out. And you're now going to see that, I saw a really nice little post on Facebook. Those that you call conspiracy theorists, maybe you should now call them spoiler alerts. Because that's exactly what it is.
Yep.
Honestly, everything that we have said for the last 2 years, every single thing has come out correct. So
Right.
it says something.
So I'd like to just finish off by saying thank you very much, Tahir, for that was a very interesting conversation, hopefully helpful to lots of people. But also, I think we barely touched on all the many proofs that we can give to demonstrate that, one, COVID is not as dangerous as it's made out to be, but also the vaccines, there's lots of the so-called vaccines, because a vaccine is something that should have a long-term effect, and these,
It's not
by
a
everybody's
vaccine.
definition, it's
It's
called
not
a
a
drug,
vaccine.
but you couldn't call it a drug because then the propaganda wouldn't work, right? So if you have any, questions, put them in the comments below. Yeah, go on.
Can I just add something here? Okay. Ivermectin is another really good example here. Okay, people say, well, what's the alternative? If you now just do some research, because like Khalid just said, there's so much information, and you can't compress it into an hour. But the idea is to give you guys some understanding, and then go and do your own research. Ivermectin's a great example here. Okay, it has been shown to eradicate COVID. It gets rid of it. But why was it suppressed to the point where you could not even get it from any pharmaceutical company? Because it is off patent. Now, this is, by the way, this drug received a Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
So it's an award-winning Nobel Prize, but it's off patent. It's 40 years old. So now anybody can make it. There's no money in it. So what do? They say, right, suppress it. Don't allow anybody to take it. But the thing is now, in places like Mexico, in places like India, especially UP in Uttar Pradesh, where their vaccines were supply was limited, they used ivermectin, and they literally got rid of the COVID cases. But here's another little point. If you actually notice, where's all the death rates? Because if the vaccines are there to save you, okay, what about all the countries in the world, places in the world where there are no vaccines? Why are they not dropping dead?
Africa. But
Africa.
except for Morocco, so if you look at the map of Africa, the two places where they are taking the vaccines, Morocco and South Africa, got the highest rates, and the rest of the country and the continent, they're fine, they're great.
Africa, Asia, all these places. So South America, you've got some places who are really pushing the vaccines, and other places they're fine. So what I would say to the people here is take this video as an inspiration to go and do your own research, because that's the only thing that's going to do. And if you still decide not to, so be it. But I mean, the thing is, though, you're going to see. Put my life on it. You're going to see that things are going to be coming out really badly, and this will prove to be the biggest scam, in our lifetime.
Well, I hope it's the biggest scam, because I worry there's a lot worse coming on the way if history were to repeat itself, quite frankly. And, the Holocaust, why should it not be repeated? We are quite... Holocaust doesn't have to be a Jewish Holocaust. It can be a Holocaust of other types of people.
No.
And people who are asleep would think that history doesn't repeat itself. That means you haven't studied history.
It always does. It always does. There's just one more thing. There's a really good program on Netflix. I can't remember the name of it, but it's about in America. It's about the medical equipment industry. Okay, they supply the equipment to the hospitals and so forth. It is literally like word for word, step by step. It's the exact same replica of what's happening now with COVID, in terms of everything they go through, all the lies, the deceit, the manipulation, the way the doctors are influenced to sell these equipments, to use the equipments, how they are rewarded, how the adverse effects are suppressed. You need to have a look at that and go, wow, this is literally the blueprint of what we're going through now with COVID. It's very interesting.
Yeah. So as I say, in the non-live comments, after if you watch the video and you've got questions, it's actually really easy to demonstrate with facts that you already agree with. We're talking about, data that the ONS and the World Health Organization, these people are giving out. We can use that data to prove that vaccines don't really work, and there's so many logical reasons. Like, I don't want to start, but like, they're genetically modified things. Like, just before the pandemic, everybody was so scared of them. Suddenly, it's okay to have that injected into your arms.
You've
That's
just reminded
psychological.
me. You just reminded me on the ONS, which is the Office of National Statistics in the UK. They've recently came out with a report. So at the time, there was about 156,000 deaths from COVID that were being reported at the time. This is maybe about a few months ago. Somebody did a information request on the number of deaths from COVID alone was 7,000. So you just now go to yourself, 17,000. That's pretty much a flu season. Okay. But now you tell 17,000 people have died in the last 18 months, compared to, and then say 156,000. Which one's going to scare the crap out of them? And which one's going to be like, oh, okay, that's normal flu. So everything has been manipulated, and it's just been one con after the other. And you're going to see, things are going to come out. They already are.
Yeah. So I would recommend people tune into my weekly live stream, where you can debate with me about these issues and many other issues. But I would like to say that if you are not a moral person, or a person who has thought about the purpose of their lives and knows their place in the universe, and has an interest in all other aspects of how we're manipulated through economic processes and things like that, you are not going to be the person who is going to stand up to these problems, or the person who makes changes. So I recommend not just focusing on this one topic of COVID and vaccinations. This is just a method by which it demonstrates to us how weak the human mind is and how easy we're manipulated if we're not particularly moral people. And we like to think we're moral people, but we can discuss that another time. But anyway, thank you, Tahir. Good to see your face, even though you're a bit fuzzy right now. And but yeah, maybe Tahir will join me in one of my weekly shows. You never know. I have to convince him.
Maybe.
But okay, catch you. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you.
Islam.
Enjoy the
Take
rest of the
care.
day.
Thank you.
You too. Hang on, just don't hang up right now. I'll just end the stream. You can have a 5-minute chat about